So, Mr. Michael, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure.
Let's start first with the importance of this region for the Milken Institute. This is the second year that you hold this huge conference here for the MENA region. So why have you picked Abu Dhabi specifically for the MENA Summit?
Well, Abu Dhabi is a wonderful place to hold the conference, both in terms of the attractiveness of the facilities and the ease of getting here from so many different places. But we're in the region because this is going to continue to be such a key and important part of the future growth of the world economy. For many years now, of course, this has been the source of capital for many people who've looked for capital from the region for investment. But the region is more and more turning toward trying to develop its own human capital, its own resources, finding ways of not just being an exporter of oil, but an innovation hub. And that makes it an exciting place for us to be. And our goal at the conference is to try and bring together leaders from the region, but also from elsewhere in the world, to compare ideas and see what people can do in order to come up with new and innovative ways to advancing the progress that's been made and that the leaders in this region hope to make in the future.
So as the Milken Institute, you also hold summits in different regions around the world. To what extent do the topics vary? Do they vary based on which summit and where the summit is taking place? Or are there actual topics that are similar across the board?
Well, the bulk of the topics are very similar across the board in terms of issues of financial stability, dealing with issues of health, education, and geopolitics. But in each region, each conference, there's a difference because there's a different perspective from that region. So if we're in Asia, there's a different perspective being brought than if we're here in the Gulf, or if we're doing it in the United States, or if we're doing it in Europe. And the speakers who are from the region bring a very different perspective in each case.
So for this year's summit, what are the main topics that are that the speakers and the sessions are focusing on that are specifically also interesting for the region and for investors looking into the region?
Well, we have roughly 45 different sessions, many of which are public. We have about 150 speakers, but many of them are private. The private sessions tend to focus more on the region because they allow for an opportunity for greater dialogue than in a public panel session. And there we're focusing on the issues of biodiversity, on food security. We're focusing on innovation, infrastructure. These are all areas on gender diversity and the opportunities for inclusion. These are all areas that are important to the region and in which people in the private sessions can discuss, as well as being mirrored in the public sessions that everyone will be attending. Well, there are two types of opportunities. One, of course, the region has been viewed as a source of capital for others, and that's not going to change. People will still come here to try and raise money. But there's now people from outside of the region are now viewing opportunities to invest as the region is working on improving the way it deals with its human capital. Financial capital is also very important, but the human capital, education, health, the population, those are all key factors for the growth of the economy. And as people see developments taking place there, they feel more comfortable in looking to invest. And I think that people right now are focusing on infrastructure, but they're also starting to focus on healthcare. There's an interest, but it isn't fully developed yet, in looking at opportunities in technology and innovation.
There are some threats to the global economy in 2019, mainly the trade war that's ongoing between the US and China.
And much of the U.S. and much of the world.
Yes. The increase in interest rates in the U.S. and how that would affect the global economy. and probably the Brexit happening in the UK. So in light of those uncertainties, how would you assess those threats in relation to the global economy?
Well, clearly, as you point out, they are threats. They do tend to act as an impediment to investment. Because as the old saying goes, capital is a coward, it only likes to go where it's safe. And that's one of the reasons why the U.S. economy and the U.S. financial markets have stayed strong, because in spite of issues the United States has, it's still viewed as a safer haven in terms of opportunities for investment. There's no question that if the dispute between the U.S. and China on trade escalates, and if it escalates and the Chinese economy continues to go through a period of slowing down, it's not in recession, but just slowing down, that's going to have an impact on the world economy. The uncertainties in Europe, the economy is just barely chugging along. Brexit is a big overhang, and no one knows how that's going to play out in terms of the impact on the economy, if it will take place, if it does, under what terms. Again, that's a significant impact. And that reflects itself on one of the other things you mentioned, which is interest rates. I think that as interest rates have been going up in the United States, it's made the carry trade has led to far more investment in the U.S., placing dollars there because the rates of return have been higher. The Fed has now announced it's slowing down, and it's slowing down because all of the things we've just talked about raise real questions about where the economy will be 1 and 2 years from now.
So are you in general optimistic about 2019?
Well, I'm cautious about 2019. I think that all signs point to the U.S. economy continuing to chugging along. I wouldn't make any predictions on whether it's a 2% growth rate, 3%, but it's likely to continue going. Signs are still relatively strong. But all the uncertainties mean that at any point this can change. And also in terms of markets, I'm a big believer in the old saying that the 4 most dangerous words in investing are "this time it's different." And market forces say that markets that go up eventually have to go down and correct. I don't think that's going to happen in 2019, but nobody knows.
So, Mr. Michael Klowden, CEO of the Milken Institute, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.